The apartment door was unlocked. That was the first thing that sent ice through my veins. Lucas never left his door unlocked. Not in this neighborhood. Not in San Francisco, where a moment of carelessness could cost you everything. I'd taught him better than that. Raised him better than that. After my daughter Sarah died in that car accident when he was just 7 years old, I pushed the door open. The living room was dark, curtains drawn in the middle of the afternoon. His laptop sat open on the coffee table, screen still glowing. That's when I heard it, a sound like someone trying to breathe through water. I found him in the bathroom. Lucas was on the floor, his back against the tub, pill bottles scattered around him like fallen leaves. His phone lay face up beside his hand, the screen showing a text message. Last chance. $500,000 by midnight, or the videos go public. Your choice, Lucas. His eyes were half closed, unfocused. When I dropped to my knees beside him, his hand moved slightly, fingers reaching for mine. Grandma. His voice was barely a whisper. Isabella, they have videos of me doing things, terrible things. But I didn't. I swear I didn't. His hand went limp in mine. I grabbed my phone, called emergency services, kept my voice steady even as my heart hammered against my ribs. 37 years working in law enforcement teaches you to compartmentalize, to act first, feel later. The paramedics arrived within 6 minutes. As they loaded Lucas onto the gurney, as I followed them down to the ambulance, I kept my face calm, professional. But inside, something old and cold was waking up, something I'd put to sleep when I retired from the FBI 5 years ago. Someone had hurt my grandson. Someone had pushed him to this edge, and they were about to learn a very important lesson about the dangers of underestimating a 67-year-old woman. At the hospital, I sat beside Lucas's bed while they pumped his stomach, while doctors assured me he'd called for help in time, while he drifted in and out of consciousness. Each time he woke, he tried to tell me. Fragmented sentences. Broken explanations. Met her on Hinge. 6 months ago. Isabella Hartwell. She was perfect, Grandma. Too perfect. Her family. So welcoming. Dinner at their place in Pacific Heights. Her father owns half the real estate in the Bay Area. Then, 3 weeks ago, I woke up in a hotel room. I don't remember how I got there. Isabella showed me the videos. Security footage. Me assaulting someone. Another one of me. With drugs. Dealing drugs. But I didn't do any of it. I swear, her father said. If I don't pay, they'll send everything to my work. To the police. My life is over. He started crying then. My grandson, 24 years old, brilliant software engineer at a promising startup, sobbing like the little boy who'd once asked me why his mother had to die. I held his hand, kept my voice gentle. Lucas, honey, I need you to tell me everything, from the beginning. Can you do that for me? He could. And he did. Isabella Hartwell, 26, stunning, with an Instagram feed full of charity galas and beach vacations. They'd matched on Hinge. She'd been charming, funny, interested in his work. Their first date had lasted 6 hours. Within 2 months, she'd introduced him to her family. The Hartwells lived in a mansion in Pacific Heights with a view of the Golden Gate Bridge. Her father, Richard Hartwell, was a prominent real estate developer. Her mother, Vivian, sat on 3 nonprofit boards. Her brother, Christopher, ran a private equity firm. They'd welcomed Lucas with open arms, too open, too warm. That should have been his first clue, but when you're young and in love, you don't see the hooks hidden in the honey. The night everything changed, they'd invited him to dinner. He remembered having wine with the meal, remembered feeling dizzy. Then nothing until he woke up in a hotel room 16 hours later with Isabella sitting in a chair beside the bed, watching him. She'd shown him the videos on her tablet. Security footage from inside the hotel. Lucas entering with a young woman who looked drugged, Lucas with his hands around her throat. Another clip of him accepting a package from a known drug dealer in the Tenderloin. A third showing him breaking into a parked car. All of it was him. His face, his body, his clothes, even his mannerisms. But he hadn't done any of it. Deepfakes, I said quietly. Lucas's head snapped up. You know about deepfakes? Of course I knew about deepfakes. I'd spent the last 10 years of my FBI career in the digital forensics division, tracking criminals who thought technology made them invisible. I'd testified in court about manipulated videos, about AI-generated images, about the digital fingerprints that always gave them away. But I'd never told Lucas about that part of my life. He knew I'd worked for the FBI. He thought I'd been an administrative analyst, pushing papers, filing reports. He had no idea his grandmother had been one of the foremost experts in digital forensics in the western United States. I'd kept it quiet after retirement, kept my head down, took up gardening, joined a book club, played the part of the harmless elderly woman. Invisibility, I'd learned long ago, was a superpower. "Lucas," I said carefully, "I need to see those videos. Can you get them for me?" He nodded weakly, reaching for his phone. His hands shook as he pulled up the messages from Isabella, the attached files. I watched them once, twice, 3 times. They were good. Professionally done. The kind of deepfakes that would fool most people. Even some law enforcement. The lighting was consistent. The shadows fell correctly. The movements were fluid. But I could see the tells. The slight unnaturalness in the way Lucas blinked. The too perfect synchronization between mouth movements and audio. The barely perceptible warping around the edges of his face in certain frames. "How much have you already paid them?" I asked. 50,000. Everything I had in savings. They want 500,000 more. "Have you told anyone else about this?" "No. They said if I go to the police, they'll release everything immediately. Said the police won't believe me anyway. That rich people always win." I patted his hand. "You did the right thing telling me. Now I need you to rest. Let the doctors take care of you, and don't contact Isabella or her family. Can you do that?" "Grandma, what are you going to do?" I stood up, shouldered my purse. "What I should have done the first time you mentioned the Hartwells. Research. The thing about being invisible is that people forget you're watching. They forget you're listening. They make mistakes." I drove home, made myself a cup of tea, and opened my laptop. The same laptop that still had access to certain databases, certain networks, certain tools that most civilians didn't know existed. The FBI might have taken my badge, but they couldn't take my knowledge. Or my contacts. I started with Isabella Hartwell. Social media first. Instagram showed the expected wealthy girl lifestyle. But when I looked closer, I noticed patterns. The same locations appeared in photos with different dates. The same outfits appeared months apart, suggesting the photos had been taken in batches and doled out over time. Then I moved to the deep web. Court records, property records, financial disclosures. The Hartwell real estate empire was built on sand. Richard Hartwell had been sued 17 times in the past 5 years for fraud, breach of contract, and embezzlement. Most cases settled quietly. 2 were still pending. His company was deeply in debt. Vivian Hartwell had been arrested for check fraud in 1995. Charges dropped. Christopher Hartwell had been investigated by the SEC for insider trading in 2019. Insufficient evidence to prosecute. A family of grifters. Polished. Professional. Desperate. Then I found the names. 7 of them. Young men, all between 23 and 32, all in tech or finance. All had dated Isabella. I cross-referenced their names with police reports, civil suits, and social media. 3 had mysterious scandals that ended their careers. 1 had attempted suicide. 2 had left the state suddenly. 1 had simply disappeared from public life. None of them had filed police reports about extortion, because they'd been too ashamed, too scared, too convinced that no one would believe them. I made a phone call. To a former colleague at the FBI, a woman named Jennifer who now ran the cybercrimes division out of the San Francisco field office. "Margaret Chen," she said when she answered. "I thought you were busy growing tomatoes and reading mystery novels." I was. Then someone made the mistake of targeting my grandson. I heard her chair creak as she sat up straighter. "Tell me everything." I did. Sent her the videos, the message logs, my research on the Hartwell family and their previous victims. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "This is a RICO case waiting to happen," she said finally. "Organized crime, racketeering, extortion, fraud. If you're right about the other victims, this family has been running this scam for years." But Margaret, I need more than circumstantial evidence. I need proof that won't get laughed out of court. I know, I said. That's why I'm going to get it for you. Margaret. Jennifer, I'm 67 years old. I'm a retired FBI agent. I'm a grieving grandmother. I can get close to them in ways your field agents can't. Let me do this. Another long pause. Then, unofficially, if you happen to gather evidence that you then choose to report to the proper authorities, I would be obligated to investigate. Officially, I never had this conversation with you. Understood. And Margaret? Be careful. If this family is as dangerous as you think, they won't hesitate to eliminate threats. I hung up and sat in the quiet of my kitchen, thinking, planning. The next morning, I created a fake profile on Hinge. Used photos from 10 years ago when my hair was darker and I'd been 50 pounds heavier. Changed my name to Margaret Sullivan. Listed my occupation as retired trust fund manager. Then I sent a message to Christopher Hartwell. He responded within an hour. We met for coffee at a cafe in the Marina District 3 days later. Christopher was handsome in that generic way of wealthy men who've had good orthodontics and regular haircuts their entire lives. He wore a Patagonia vest over a dress shirt. His watch cost more than Lucas's car. He was charming, attentive, asked questions about my fictional career in finance, my fictional late husband who'd left me comfortably well off, my fictional loneliness. I played my part, the widow looking for companionship, maybe more. I laughed at his jokes, touched his arm, mentioned casually that I'd recently sold some property in Palo Alto and wasn't sure what to do with the proceeds. His eyes lit up like a slot machine hitting jackpot. My sister is dating someone, he said over his second cappuccino. Lovely guy, a bit young for her, but very sweet. We're having a family dinner this Sunday. Why don't you join us? I think you'd really enjoy meeting everyone. I accepted with just the right amount of hesitation. Sunday evening, I drove to the Hartwell mansion in Pacific Heights. The house was beautiful, pristine, the kind of place that screamed old money, even though I knew it was mortgaged to the hilt. Richard Hartwell answered the door himself. Silver-haired, distinguished, with the practiced handshake of a man who'd spent his life convincing people to trust him. Vivian greeted me with air kisses and a comment about my vintage handbag. Isabella was there too, looking like something out of a fashion magazine, smiling at me with practiced warmth. And there, sitting on the couch with a glass of wine, was a young man who wasn't Lucas, but could have been his twin. 26, maybe 27. Software engineer at Google, Isabella mentioned. They'd been dating for 2 months. His name was Kevin. I watched as the Hartwells circled him, poured him wine, asked about his work, his family, his finances, mentioned investment opportunities, real estate deals, sure things. I watched Kevin's face, saw the trust there, the hope, the belief that he'd found something real. I'd seen that same expression on Lucas's face in the photos he'd shown me from his early dates with Isabella. During dinner, I excused myself to use the bathroom. Took a wrong turn on purpose. Found my way to Richard's study. The door was unlocked. Inside, I spent 90 seconds photographing everything. Documents on his desk, papers in his open briefcase, sticky notes on his computer monitor with passwords written in blue ink. Then I found the filing cabinet. The bottom drawer was locked, but I'd been opening locks since my first week at Quantico in 1982. It took me 23 seconds. Inside were folders, each labeled with a name. I recognized 3 of them as Lucas's fellow victims. The others must have been earlier marks. Each folder contained the same things: copies of fake videos, screenshots of bank transfers, signed documents that looked like settlement agreements. I photographed everything with my phone, then carefully returned everything to its exact position. By the time I returned to the dining room, dessert was being served. I smiled, ate my tiramisu, complimented Vivian on her decorating. When Christopher drove me home that night, he kissed me on the cheek and said he'd love to see me again. I think you're exactly what this family needs, he said. I smiled. I think so too. The next morning, I sent everything to Jennifer. She called me 2 hours later. Holy hell, Margaret. This is even bigger than we thought. We're seeing evidence of at least 15 victims over the past 8 years. The fake videos, the extortion, the money laundering through shell companies. This isn't just a scam. It's an enterprise. What do you need from me? We need you to wear a wire. We need them to offer you the same deal on record. Can you do that? I thought about Lucas in that hospital bed. Thought about Kevin, who didn't know yet that he was being set up. Thought about all the other young men who'd had their lives destroyed by this family. Yes, I said. I can do that. The wire was small, almost invisible. The FBI technician taped it to my chest while I sat in the back of an unmarked van 2 blocks from the Hartwell mansion. Remember, Jennifer said, we need them to explicitly state the terms of the extortion. We need them to mention the fake videos. We need them to ask for money in exchange for not releasing compromising material. Can you get them to say that? I've been getting criminals to confess for 37 years, I said. This is just another day at the office. Christopher had invited me to lunch. Just the 2 of us, he'd said, somewhere quiet where we could talk. We met at an upscale restaurant in Nob Hill. He ordered wine. I ordered sparkling water. Margaret, he said, leaning forward, I want to be honest with you. I really like you. I think we could have something special. But before we go any further, there's something I need to tell you. Here we go. I'm in a bit of a financial situation, he continued. An investment that went south. I need to raise some capital quickly, or I'm going to lose everything. I hate to ask, but you mentioned you had some liquid assets from that property sale. How much do you need? I asked. $200,000. I know it's a lot, but I can pay you back in 6 months with 20% interest. I just need a short-term loan. I pretended to consider. Christopher, I'd like to help, but I barely know you. What kind of collateral can you offer? His smile tightened. Margaret, I thought we had trust. I thought we had a connection. We do. But I didn't become wealthy by making foolish decisions. If you want my money, I need insurance. He studied me for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone. Insurance. Right. Well, Margaret, the thing is, we have ways of ensuring our business partners remain cooperative. He showed me a video on his phone. It was clearly fake, clearly manipulated, but it showed me entering a bank, wearing different clothes than I owned, with a security timestamp from a date I'd been in Sacramento visiting my sister. What is this? I asked, keeping my voice shaky. Insurance, he said. If you invest with us, everything is fine. If you decide to cause problems, well, this video of you robbing a bank gets sent to the police, along with a few others we've prepared. Your choice, Margaret. This isn't real, I whispered. Doesn't matter if it's real. It looks real. And once it's out there, once the police start investigating, once your name is in the news, does it matter? Your reputation is destroyed either way. So you're blackmailing me. I'm offering you a business opportunity. The blackmail only happens if you make the wrong choice. I let my hand shake as I reached for my water glass, let my voice tremble. How many people have you done this to? Does it matter? They all paid. Smart ones, anyway. The stupid ones. He shrugged. Well, let's just say their lives got complicated. Like Lucas Chen? His face went blank. Who? My grandson. The one your sister destroyed. The one who almost died because of what your family did to him. I watched the realization hit him, watched his face change from confusion to understanding to cold calculation. He reached for my purse. I let him take it. He pulled out my phone, my wallet, checking my ID. Margaret Chen, he read. Oh, you stupid woman. Did you really think you could play us? No, I said calmly. I knew I could catch you. I tapped the small earpiece I was wearing. Did you get all that, Jennifer? Christopher's face went white. FBI. The shout came from the restaurant entrance. 3 agents moved in, hands on their weapons. Christopher Hartwell, you're under arrest. Don't move. He moved anyway. Tried to run for the back exit. They had him on the ground in seconds, hands cuffed behind his back. Jennifer appeared beside my table, grinning. Beautiful work, Margaret. Really beautiful. The others? I asked. Teams are hitting the house and Richard's office right now. We'll have all 3 of them in custody within the hour. Christopher was screaming from the floor. Threats, accusations, promises of lawyers and lawsuits. I stood up, walked over to where they had him pinned, and crouched down so he could see my face. Here's what's going to happen, I said quietly. You and your family are going to prison. Federal prison. for a very long time. Racketeering, extortion, fraud, identity theft. And every single one of your victims is going to get justice. You can't prove anything, he spat. I smiled. Christopher, I spent 37 years at the FBI. I was one of the leading experts in digital forensics. I literally wrote the manual on detecting deepfakes, and you just confessed to everything on a federal wire. We have lawyers. We have money. You have debt and fake videos. I have evidence and 16 victims willing to testify. Do the math. They dragged him away, still screaming. The trial took 8 months. The evidence was overwhelming. The Hartwells had been running their scam for nearly a decade, targeting over 20 young men, stealing over $3 million. Richard Hartwell got 15 years. Vivian got 12. Christopher got 10. Isabella got 8, plus supervised release and restitution, Lucas testified. So did Kevin. So did 5 other victims who'd been too scared to come forward before. On the day of sentencing, Lucas sat beside me in the courtroom. He'd been in therapy for 6 months. He'd switched jobs. He was seeing someone new, a girl he'd met at a friend's wedding, someone real. How did you know? He asked me as we watched the Hartwells being led away in handcuffs. How did you know what to look for? How did you know how to beat them? I thought about my years at the FBI, about the hundreds of cases I'd worked, about all the criminals who thought technology made them invincible, who thought their victims would be too ashamed to fight back. Because I've spent my whole life watching powerful people underestimate the ones they think are weak, I said. And I've learned that the most dangerous person in any room is usually the one nobody's paying attention to. The invisible one, Lucas said. Exactly. We stood to leave. As we walked out of the courthouse, I saw them, young men, sitting in the gallery. Some I recognized from my research. Others must have been victims I hadn't found. They'd come to watch justice being served, to see that someone had finally believed them, that they weren't alone. One of them, a young man about Lucas's age, stopped me on the steps. "You're Margaret Chen," he said, "the grandmother who caught them." "I am. Thank you," he said, his voice breaking. "Thank you for believing, for fighting, for caring." I squeezed his hand. That's what grandmothers do. That night, Lucas came over for dinner. We made spaghetti, his favorite since he was 7 years old. We talked about his new job, his new girlfriend, his plans for the future. As he was leaving, he hugged me tight. "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Anything. All those years you worked for the FBI, all those cases you worked, did you ever get scared?" I thought about it. About the dangerous criminals I'd tracked. About the threats I'd received. About the times I'd walked into situations not knowing if I'd walk out. Every single time, I said honestly. But being scared doesn't mean you're weak. It means you understand the stakes. The question is, what do you do with that fear? What did you do? I used it. Let it sharpen my focus. Let it remind me why the work mattered. And then I did the work anyway. He nodded slowly. "I want to be like that. Like you. You already are, Lucas. You asked for help. You survived. You testified. That took more courage than anything I did." After he left, I sat on my porch with a cup of tea, watching the fog roll in over the city. Somewhere out there, the Hartwells were sitting in federal prison, their empire destroyed, their victims finally free. And somewhere else, in offices and courtrooms and police stations, other people were doing the same work I'd done for 37 years, fighting for the ones who couldn't fight for themselves, believing the ones nobody else would believe. My daughter Sarah used to ask me why I did it, why I worked such long hours, why I missed soccer games and school plays, why I couldn't just have a normal job. I'd tell her that someday she'd understand, that someday she'd know why it mattered. She died before that someday came. But I think Lucas understands now. I think he knows that justice isn't about revenge. It's about making sure that the powerful can't destroy the powerless just because they think they can. It's about remembering that every victim is someone's child, someone's grandchild, someone worth fighting for. The technology changes. The crimes get more sophisticated, but the fundamental truth remains the same. The truth is the most powerful weapon in the world, and patience, combined with knowledge and determination, will always outlast greed. My phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. Another case just came in. Dating scam with deepfakes. Different family, same pattern. Interested in consulting? I smiled and typed back, "Send me the files." Because here's what the Hartwells never understood, what criminals like them never understand. Retirement is just a word. Justice is a calling. And this grandmother still has work to do.